Hello, everyone, and welcome to my podcast. Today we are reading page 2 of 7 of one of my favorite books of all time, a tiny little booklet written by the third patriarch, the third lineage holder of Zen Buddhism. And this book is called the Sin Ming. And I learned about it years ago from Ram Dass, my teacher, as he studied only this little booklet for years and would spend 6 months or a year on a page or on a few verses. You can find the other 6 parts to this commentary on my playlist on YouTube and by searching on Apple and Spotify. So first we will read the page and then we'll talk about it a little bit. When you try to stop activity to achieve quietude, your very effort fills you with activity. As long as you remain attached to one extreme or another, you will never know oneness. Those who do not live in the single way cannot be free in either activity or quietude, in assertion or denial. Deny the reality of things and you miss their reality. Assert the emptiness of things and you miss their reality. The more you talk and think about it, the further you wander from the truth. So cease attachment to talking and thinking, and there's nothing you won't be able to know. To return to the root is to find the essence, but to pursue appearances or enlightenment is to miss the source. To awaken even for a moment is to go beyond appearances and emptiness. Changes that seem to occur in the empty world we make real only because of our ignorance. Do not seek for the truth, only cease to cherish opinions. So how can we unpack what's here? First, I want to say I've done videos also reading this entire book. So if you want to listen to it in its entirety, you can search those on my channels as well. This is a teaching for very end of the road practitioners. You can take it in at any point on your path, but to practice and absorb it and apply it, one has to have a deep foundation of spiritual practice, of sadhana having been done, of insight and understanding, because it really takes you beyond duality, beyond even a advanced practitioner's way of looking at the world. So he says, when you try to stop activity to achieve quietude, your very effort fills you with activity. This means that eventually we get to a place where we cannot think of ourselves as the doer, the forcer, or the trier. Even if we're sitting to meditate, to read, to breathe, it should happen spontaneously. Because if it feels forced, if the mind is pushing this, your very effort is filling you with more thoughts, with more activity, which is ultimately taking you further from the goal of present moment love and awareness. And so he says, as long as you remain attached to one extreme or another. So in this world, we often veer towards the extreme of no quietude, of being overactive, over rajasic, which is one of the 3 gunas in Hinduism, the guna of passion, the strand of passion and activity. So a lot of us, we could do well to sit in much more quietude. But this great Buddhist monk, the Patriarch of Zen Buddhism, he says, once you've also done that, you do not want to be attached to the extreme of sitting in solitude, because activity is also part of the one. And when you're free, you can be both active and in solitude. But it takes us a long time to get there. And we need to put a lot into our solitude so that we can be, as Jesus said, in the world, but not of it. But it's important to hold those two perspectives. Because he says, if you don't, you'll never know oneness. And he says, if you don't live in the single way, if you think there's duality, this, that, right, wrong, if you separate your own mind between I'm judging myself, I have to forgive myself, you're making a one into two. What am I going to do later? If we're doing those things, we're not living in the single way of the heart. And so he says, if you don't live in the single way, you can't be free either in activity or quietude, in assertion or denial. Then he goes on, deny the reality of things and you miss their reality. Assert the emptiness of things, which also means the boundlessness, and you miss their reality. So this is tricky because most of us, we do not deny the reality of things and we do not assert their emptiness. We are totally obsessed, enamored with, and identified with what we see in the world, with what comes in through our senses. But he's saying, after you have realized this whole world is emptiness, that it's nothing. Think about string theory, that it's little strings popping in and out of form and formlessness. When you realize there's a boundless essence that goes through all things, that they are not as they appear. First, you cultivate this understanding, this view and perspective. He says, but then once you know that, don't be afraid to engage in the world. Don't be afraid to enjoy the simpleness of objects in their seeming duality, of people in their seeming duality. Don't miss the beauty of this relative reality, of this play of form. So stand halfway between form and emptiness. And then beautifully, it says, the more you talk and think about it, the further you wander from the truth. So cease attachment to talking and thinking, and there's nothing you'll not be able to know. Again, end of the road pointing. Because to start on our path, and even to go far, we must cultivate great foundations of wisdom, of insight, of study of the scriptures, so that we can even understand what the goal is, so that we can remind ourselves and remember and stay focused and dedicated and learn what's going on here. But there's the huge pitfall of the pundit, of the scholar, of the philosopher, of getting caught in words and thoughts rather than direct experience. So example, you're hearing me say these words. You can take them in, let them pass through you. Feel the love, power, essence behind this teaching and integrate it into your life. But if you become over obsessed with every little nuance, oh, is this right or wrong? You become obsessed with thinking about the words rather than being the words. You wander from the truth. However, at first, there's great value in understanding the premise of what is being said, which is why I'm explaining it here. But then we come to a certain point where we read our books and hear our podcast as reminders of truth, but we don't let them create more thought patterns in our minds, more discussions, more Rumi says that intellectual warp and woof will keep you trapped, will keep you at the door without knowing God. Ram Dass used to say about Aldous Huxley and Alan Watts, they were so unattached except to knowing they knew, except to knowing that their intellect knew the truth and could understand. And that keeps us trapped too. The great sage Ramana Maharshi says there'll come a time when you have to give up everything you know. And Ramakrishna Paramahansa said there's two kinds of people that realize God. The simple ones from the start, and those who, after having studied all the scriptures, realize they know nothing. So he's saying here, you can talk and you can think. He obviously wrote this, but don't be attached to it. And then there's nothing you won't be able to know. He says to return to the root, to the source, is to find the essence. It reminds me of the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu in Taoism, which is closely associated with Zen. Lao Tzu says, I've seen all things whither they go back, how all things flourish for a time and then return to their source, to their root. And he also says, truth waits for eyes unclouded by longing. So ask yourself, which desires and longings do you have, and how those are stirring your mind up and keeping you from truth. Then he goes on to say, to pursue appearances or enlightenment is to miss the source. To awaken even for a moment is to go beyond appearance and emptiness. Well, what does this mean? To pursue appearances, forms, and ideas is to miss the source. So the idea of enlightenment is, again, necessary to push out all your lesser ideas, all your lesser desires, to understand the goal and where you're going. But eventually, you don't want to get caught in the idea of enlightenment. You hold the knowing in your being, but you don't obsess about the term or the idea, because you know that true reality, that truth is beyond what could be thought about. And you don't want that to be a stumbling block for you ultimately. Because many people, good, well-meaning people in many religions, don't go further because they get caught up in ideas, in appearances. And he says to awaken even for a moment is to go beyond appearance and emptiness. Meaning to awaken is to go beyond forms and beyond formless, because the truth is beyond these words. The formless is that which is prior to forms. You could think of God in the unmanifest state before it becomes us, before it comes into being. That is the formless. The formless you could think of as the dark matter or the antimatter or the strings that make up the universe as they pop in and out of existence. So Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching says, what is depends on what is not. Your words and thoughts depend on your silence. The silence is the formless. The thoughts and words are the appearance. Changes that seem to occur in the empty world we make real only because of our ignorance. Changes that seem to occur in this world we make real because we're ignorant, because we don't realize that nothing is actually happening, that the changes happen in the forms and the appearances, but not in the essence. And in reality, nothing ever happens. Do not seek for the truth, only cease to cherish opinions. So, what does this mean? It means that our biggest obstacle to truth, which we don't have to attain because we already are, is the opinions, ideas, and beliefs that we cling on to so fiercely. These are what block us from knowing God, from knowing our true nature. So he says, just work on ceasing to cherish such strong opinions. You can still have opinions about things, but don't hold them so tightly. Hold them a little looser. Don't identify with them so strongly. And when you can let go of these, the mind becomes more clear, more transparent, and the truth comes through. You can find this book many places, I would assume, but on Amazon for just about $4 or $5. And again, I've done a couple of full readings on it that are available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And you can find the playlist on YouTube or search the episodes on Apple and Spotify to listen to the other 6 parts of this commentary. Thank you.